All right, if you're using Raspberry Pi, I am willing to bet you're not just wanting to use it as a simple computer. The fun with the Raspberry Pi comes from this little guy here, known as the GPIO, which stands for General Purpose Input and Output. And what's great about this is it will allow this computer to connect to any circuit that you build. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is to get yourself your GPIO connector cable. And it looks like this. You'll see one end has a bunch of holes in it. And what you need to do is take the end with the holes in it with the white line on the cable closest to the back end where the SD card is of your Raspberry Pi, and to push it on so that it makes a nice firm connection. Then, on the other side, on your circuit board, you want to actually push that piece into your breadboard or prototyping board so you can actually make use of it. Now, a couple of things to notice with this is that there are labels all the way around this. And so there's a few things that you'll notice. For example, GND appears all over the place. And what that is ground. And any circuit has to start somewhere and end somewhere. And a circuit will always end at ground. And so we'll be using one of the ground pins for our circuit today. You'll also notice that a bunch of these pins have numbers. And the numbered pins are important because those are the pins we're going to connect to make things happen. And so on this circuit, you can see that our circuit here, it's kind of hard to see from the angle, but one side of our light emitting diode is connected to pin 19, and that'll be my positive end. Then it connects through a resistor, and the resistor is connected to the ground pin. And so for my program, I just need to be able to talk to pin 19 to make things happen. This device here is known as an LED. LEDs come in lots of different colors, and LED stands for light emitting diode. Now, there's a couple of important facts to know about LEDs before we start to use one. First of all, the LEDs provide very little to no resistance. As a result, in order to use an LED, you always have to use a resistor in series with the light. Otherwise, you have run the risk of burning out your light bulb and, worse, the GPIO port. The other thing you'll notice is that any LED, when it comes from the store, has one pin that's longer than the other. It's important to make sure that you put the positive part of your circuit on the positive pin, which is the longest pin, and the negative part of your circuit on the smaller or the negative pin. So for this, what I've done is you can see that I have on pin 19, you can see it's numbered right here. On pin 19, I have taken my LED, and I've taken the long side of my LED because that's the positive, and I've hooked that in line with pin 19. What I've then done is I've run that so the negative pin just goes to an empty row of pins in my breadboard. From there, the resistor comes back to, and you can see pin 20 there, where on my GPIO port is listed as ground. So what I have is the positive part of my circuit going to the positive pin of my LED, the negative side of my LED connecting to the resistor, and then the resistor connecting to ground, completing the circuit. Now on the Raspberry Pi side, on the software side, in order to talk to your GPIO, you have to actually be a super user. You have to have unlimited rights. And to do that is really straightforward. All I do is I click on this little button here to open a terminal, and I type the instruction sudo, which means become super user, and the program I want to run is called idle. And so if I simply type that in, that will open up a Python shell that will give me access to idle, or give me access to the GPIO. And the program I'm going to put in here, and I'll make sure to include this in the comments for the YouTube video as well. But if I type into this box this series of commands, so import Rpi.GPIO as GPIO, which basically tells tells the Raspberry Pi that I want to use the GPIO library. I have a command which basically tells the Raspberry Pi which type of board, which type of circuit board I'm using. Then I know that I'm hooked up to pin 19, so I want to set up pin 19 to be an output pin. I want to be able to turn that pin on and off as opposed to sense whether the pin is on or off. Then I'm going to start a loop. While true, which essentially true is always true, so while forever, I want to, on the GPI output, I want to set pin 19 to 1, which means on. Effectively, it switches it to 5 volts. Then I just want my program to count to 500,000. And with any loop, you have to have it do something, so I'm just randomly saying I want J to be the same as I. It doesn't have any bearing in the program whatsoever, it just has to have something that I'm doing during that loop. Then GPI output, pin 19 set to 0, so switch it off. Then count to 500,000 again, and it'll cycle through. So if this works, I should have my light bulb switch on, have the program count up, then have the light bulb switch off. And so I should end up with a blinking light. Let's see if that works. All right, so now I've got things ready to run. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to start my program. And sure enough, the light blinks on and off.